The assassin. You know I break necks, call me Jack Tate. I have no regrets while your life is fading. I'm a crazy fuck equivalent to Satan. When I'm behind the mic, I feel like the greatest. You know I break necks, call me Jack Tate. I have no regrets while your life is fading. I'm a crazy fuck equivalent to Satan. When I'm behind the mic, I feel like the greatest.
What up, y'all? You're listening to Sports Talk with Tropp, and I'm your host, Katie Tropp. Well, it is Halloween, so hopefully some stupid-ass kids don't come to my door and ring the doorbell. I don't participate in handing out candy to children. I never have done that. I never will do that. If you don't know, I hate children. I'm completely open about how much I hate children. If you have children, good for you. You should take care of them. But I do not like children. I don't like being around children, so I do not encourage children to come to my door. For free candy especially. What the fuck did you do for this free candy? Not a goddamn thing. Congratulations. You wore a fucking costume. Hooray. Why do you deserve candy for that? So, yeah, I don't participate in that. And I also don't wear costumes because I am over the age of 12. Yes, I think you are a child if you are over the age of 12 and wearing a costume. So, you listening to this in your costume right now, yes, I think you're an idiot. But you do you, boo-boo. I mean, I'm a nihilist anyway, so that means I don't give a shit about any holidays. I basically think everything in life is pointless and stupid, but most certainly holidays. So, I don't give a shit about Halloween, and I don't give a shit about any of the holidays coming up. As a matter of fact, the only thing that I like about the holidays is that I get those days off because I work for a lawyer, so I essentially get every stupid holiday out there off. So cool, that works for me. But other than that, hopefully some stupid-ass kids don't ring on the doorbell and make my dogs bark. But if they do, my door is closed. So hopefully that deters them. But anyways, let's get right into it. We had the World Series start this weekend. On Friday night was Game 1, which Philadelphia ended up getting the win, 6-5 in 10 innings. It was crazy because you really expected. Justin Verlander has had one of the greatest seasons of his career, absolutely a Cy Young winning career or season, but he just can't get a win in the World Series, and he still cannot get a win in the World Series. He pitched a pretty decent game to start, but then as the game wore on, it just really started to get away from him. It actually started out with Kyle Mother Tucker walking up to the plate, and he hit 2 home runs. So it looked like Houston was just going to run away with this game. But then all of a sudden, Verlander just started to give it up, and they kept him in the game, I think, just a bit too long. And then the bullpen came in and just gave up all the runs, and basically Philly ended up tying the game. And so in the 10th inning, actually in the 9th inning, the Astros came up to bat and looked like they were going to get a base hit to win the game. And Castellanos made a huge play, huge catch actually to seal the deal for to the Phillies. And then so going into the 10th inning, JT Realmuto came up to the plate and he hit the game-winning home run. And so Philly would take Game 1, but then Game 2 would basically be exactly what was expected, as Houston absolutely annihilated the Phillies 5-2. You know, it was a really great game from Framber Valdez. He pitched basically about as perfect a game as you could pitch, other than having a legit perfect game. But he was solid to start the game. You know, the first inning, Altuve came up. He got on base. Pena got on base. Alvarez got on base and a couple of hits. So they actually started out right the gate, 3-0. Then Alex Bregman came up in about, I believe it was the 4th or the 5th inning. He hit a home run to put them up 5-0. And then it looked like the Phillies were going to make a little bit of a run. Kyle Schwarber had this huge hit that looked like it was gonna be a home run, but it just clipped foul. So they were never able to get really going in that game. And so the Astros pretty much dominated that game. So coming into Game 3, we're tied up at 1. Game 3 was supposed to be tonight, but it did get postponed. Apparently it's raining in Philadelphia. So they're supposed to play Game 3 tomorrow. So we'll see what happens there. I think the extra day off is probably going to benefit both teams. But we'll see what happens here. And so far, we have a really good World Series. Now let's get into the weekend of the NFL, Week 8 recap here. Let's start it off with the Chicago Bears at my Dallas Cowboys. Dallas absolutely dominated the Bears, as they should, and it was really nice to see them dominate the way they did. They did end up getting the win 49-29. All season long, they've pretty much the defense has been what's led the charge for the team. So it was really actually nice to see the offense be the driving force this week. I really think Dak needed to come out and have a solid, dominating game where it all relied on him, and it basically all relied on him other than the ground attack. But Dak had a solid game, went 21 for 27, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. He really just had the bad interception towards the end of the first half. I felt like that kind of swayed things a little bit for the Bears to get them a couple extra points, but it really didn't matter in the end. Tony Pollard also had a spectacular game. He had 14 carries, 131 yards, and 3 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb had a great game, 5 receptions, 77 yards, 1 touchdown. Micah Parsons had a fumble recovery, ran it back for a touchdown. Really, the Cowboys just had an overall solid day, basically at every facet of the game. I mean, they scored 14 points in every quarter except for the fourth quarter, and they just really made it look easy. And they even scored a touchdown on their first 4 drives of the game, which they haven't done in quite some time. So it was really nice to see the Cowboys dominate, headed into the bye week, and we are 6-2 right now. So it's looking real good for as opposed to the way things were looking in week 1. Then we had the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles did exactly what I expected them to do. They kicked the shit out of the Steelers 35-13. Jalen Hurts had probably his best game of the season. He went 19 for 28, 285 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Sanders, he had 9 carries, 78 yards, and 1 touchdown. And A.J. Brown, he's had very solid games for the most part, but I would say this is his breakout game for the Eagles. He had 6 receptions, 156 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the game. And really just the Eagles just absolutely dominated, and they still remain the only undefeated team in the league right now. Then we had the Denver Broncos at the Jacksonville Jaguars. This was the London game. And the Broncos actually got a win. They won 21-17. Actually didn't have a terrible game. It was a slow start for them. It was pretty back and forth between them and the Jags. But the Jags did what the Jags do. You know, they had the lead, and then they gave it up in the end because they just weren't able to hold off the Broncos from scoring. And once the Broncos scored, there was still about 1:30 left on the clock, and Trevor Lawrence comes right out and throws an interception. So the Broncos were able to seal that win. Russell Wilson had a pretty solid game. He went 18 for 30, 252 yards, and a touchdown. And Travis Etienne, the running back of the Jaguars, he also had a solid game with 24 carries, 156 yards, and a touchdown. Then we had the Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons, which was a crazy game. I mean, it was back and forth all the way till the end. This game ended up going into overtime. The Falcons did get the win in overtime, 37-34. It was really crazy because, it was the Falcons had just scored a field goal to take the lead again. And there was like a minute or so left on the clock for the Panthers. And the Panthers really did drive right down the field. P.J. Walker had this huge bomb to DJ Moore, and they were able to. DJ Moore made the catch. He made the touchdown, but unfortunately, he made the stupid move of taking his helmet off and celebrating. And it is. I've always hated that rule. Just because, Emmitt Smith, they actually used to call it the Emmitt Smith rule, because Emmitt Smith used to, every time he would score a touchdown, he would take his helmet off in the end zone, and that's how he would celebrate. But that hasn't been allowed in the league for quite some time. I mean, Emmitt Smith was still in the league when they put this rule in place. So DJ Moore should know. I know it was an exciting moment for him, but unfortunately what it did was it backed up the extra point, and they ended up missing the extra point. And so they would end up going into overtime, and they would actually miss a field goal in overtime, and the Falcons would make the field goal and would go on to get the win. I will say, though, Deontay Foreman has been a driving force for this Carolina Panthers ground attack. He had 26 carries, 118 yards, and 3 touchdowns. As I mentioned, P.J. Walker, he had a great game, 19 for 36, 317 yards and a touchdown. And DJ Moore had 6 receptions, 152 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 costly penalty. Now, granted, they still could have missed that extra point, but DJ Moore backing him up the 15 yards really put them in a poor position, and the Panthers could have walked away with a huge win, but unfortunately, that's not the way it worked out. Then we had the Miami Dolphins at the Detroit Lions, which was a crazy game because Detroit came right out the gate, had the lead all the way till the very end, and then the Dolphins just made a nice little comeback. They would end up getting the win 31-27. Tua Tagovailoa, he was really the driving force in this win. He went 29 for 36, 382 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill had 188 yards, and they made a great comeback. It's really not shocking just because the Lions are not a very good team, and this is kind of what they're known for. They put up a bunch of points, and then they either aren't able to make a comeback and score enough points to get the win, or they just stumble at the end, and that's what they did against the Dolphins here. So good for the Dolphins. They were actually able to prove that they could come back and get the win. Then another exciting game was the Arizona Cardinals at the Minnesota Vikings. And, I mean, this was a back-and-forth affair also. And the Vikings did end up getting the win 34-26. Kyler Murray had a few costly interceptions. The Vikings defense was able to actually sack him, I believe, 3 times. So they really had Kyler Murray running for his life, and that really put this Cardinals team behind the 8 ball, and they just weren't able to get the job done. Whereas the Vikings, I actually do believe in them. I definitely think they're obviously in the driver's seat to win this division unless the Packers are able to somehow become a halfway decent team at some point this season. But that's yet to be seen. Whereas the Vikings, offensively, they have all the weapons. It's really if Kirk Cousins is just not able to just throw a stupid interception in the red zone or something fucking stupid like that, this team is able to score at will. They've got Jefferson at wide receiver, one of the top receivers in the league. They've got Adam Thielen at receiver as well, who's just a shifty guy who could get you the extra yardage that you need, especially yards after the catch. Then they've also got KJ Osborne, who's come out of nowhere. He's having a solid season. Then you've got the ground attack as well with Dalvin Cook. So really, this Vikings offense is very, very good. And then defensively, they just seem to get better every single week. So really, you want to look out for the Vikings. Now, the Vikings have always been that team where they have a solid regular season and then lay an egg come postseason time. So I can't say I believe in them as a Super Bowl contender yet, but they definitely have the right formula to get to the Super Bowl. And they are a damn good team, and they've actually beat some damn good teams and had some damn good wins. So you really got to give it up to the Vikings right now. They only have 1 loss on the season, and they're looking really good. Speaking of not looking really good, we had the Las Vegas Raiders at the New Orleans Saints, and the Raiders had probably one of the most pathetic games they have had in the history of their existence. And I'm not talking about them being the Las Vegas Raiders' existence. I'm meaning the entire existence of the Raiders franchise. They did not even get past the 50-yard line until the 4th quarter, and I mean like midway in the 4th quarter. So that's very pathetic. They couldn't even score 1 point. The Saints ended up smashing them 24-0, and the Saints are not that good of a team. They're not the worst team, obviously, but they're not that good of a team. There's no way they should be rolling over you, especially when you have the weapons that the Raiders have on offense. Although, Alvin Kamara, he just had an insane day yesterday. He finally had his breakout game of the season. On the ground, he had 18 carries, 62 yards, and a touchdown. Then also through the air, he had 9 receptions, 96 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then Andy Dalton also had a very solid day with 22 for 30, 229 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Then the other interesting game was the New England Patriots at the New York Jets. I actually expected the Jets to put up a fight in this one. Now, they did put up a fight, but they have now lost to the Patriots 13 times in a row. The Patriots got the win 22-17. I mean, really, it was due to Zach Wilson. He had 3 interceptions yesterday and he has his highs, but he also has his lows. And yesterday he had some major lows. You know, he did go 20 for 41, 355 yards and 2 touchdowns, but those 3 interceptions were very costly. Also a very ticky-tacky roughing the passer penalty. Also took back an interception for a touchdown that the Jets had. So that really screwed them over. But I mean, overall, it was really the 3 interceptions from Zach Wilson that cost them this game, and they were still not able to get over the Patriots' curse. And to top it off, Bill Belichick is now second all time in wins. He just passed George Halas yesterday. And it's only fitting that he passes George Halas and goes second all time against the Jets, because Bill Belichick owns the motherfucking Jets. So we'll see if the Jets are able to finally get over that hump later on in the season. Then we had the Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. And basically Derrick Henry do what Derrick Henry do, and that is run over the Texans. The Titans ended up getting the win 17-10. Derrick Henry had 32 carries for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is, I believe, the 6th time in his career he has gone for over 200 yards. So I believe he's tied O.J. Simpson, and I can't recall who the other running back is, but anytime you're in the company of O.J. Simpson when discussing football and not discussing murder, then that's always great company to be in. But yeah, Derrick Henry, it's funny because I even had my questions as to whether he was going to be able to continue to be the great running back he is with the injury he suffered last year, because he did suffer a foot injury, and so he's a running back, so you never know. Derrick Henry has picked it up. He's back to right where he is, and that's being the best running back in the league. And I feel like we are all very fortunate to actually get to witness the greatness that is Derrick Henry, because he's just been a solid back from the day he hit the league, and he just continues to be a solid back all the way up until he kicks some Texans' ass. Then we have the Washington Commanders at the Indianapolis Colts. This was a snooze fest to start, but the fourth quarter is actually where shit got started. The Commanders did end up getting a close win, 17-16. It was very slow, like I said, first half. Then the fourth quarter, they both kind of picked it up and started to score. But it wasn't enough for the Colts, whereas Taylor Heineke was able to put together a solid game for Washington. He went 23 for 31, 279 yards and a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor for the Colts actually had a very solid game with 76 yards. But overall, the Colts, they just did not look good. They had no spark offensively. And the Commanders, they didn't really have much going offensively either, but they were just able to take advantage of the few holes in the Indianapolis Colts defense. Then you had the San Francisco 49ers at the Los Angeles Rams, and the 49ers just continue their domination of the Rams. They smashed the Rams 31-14. Jimmy Garoppolo had a solid day. He went 21 for 25, 235 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the game of the day was Christian freaking McCaffrey. Welcome to San Francisco. This was his second game in a San Francisco 49ers uniform, and he made it memorable. He scored a touchdown on the ground running. He scored a touchdown by receiving. And then he also threw for a touchdown as well. And that's only happened twice in the league. The only other time it happened was with LaDainian Tomlinson back in, I think, 2005-ish, early 2000s, around then. But Christian McCaffrey, he just had a solid day. Not only did he have 3 touchdowns, but he also had 94 yards on the ground. And he's fitting right into this Kyle Shanahan offense, and exactly he's the perfect weapon for them. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when Deebo Samuel comes back from injury, because then you're going to have both of those weapons. And so that Niners offense is going to be something else, plus that defense. Niners look really good right now, and they just smashed their division opponents, the Rams. Then you had the New York Giants at the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks continue their surprise season. They dominated the Giants as well, 27-13. Geno Smith continues to have just a phenomenal season. He went 23 for 34, 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. They were able to only keep Saquon Barkley at 53 yards, so that says a lot since he's been the leading rusher of the season. And really, the Seahawks defense is what really held it down, and then the offense was just able to take advantage and score when they needed to score. But the Seahawks, one of the most surprising teams, they are leading their division currently right now. And as I just mentioned, the 49ers look really good, but right now the Seahawks are number one in that division. Then to round out the night, we had Sunday Night Football, was the Green Bay Packers at the Buffalo Bills. Now, I'm sure when the schedule makers first put this as Sunday Night Football, they expected a much more interesting game, which it really was not last night. The Buffalo Bills just dominated the Packers 27-17. Now, it kind of feels like with the way the Bills played yesterday that it should have been like, the score should have been like 41-17. But really, in the second half, for some reason, the Bills just kind of took their foot off the gas and just really let the Packers slowly get into it. And if the Packers actually had a halfway decent offense, they probably would have made this a good game. But they did not. I mean, really, the Bills had 17 points in the second quarter, so it was really just an ass-kicking going into halftime. And the Packers were really just lucky to score the 17 points that they scored. It was such an anemic offense for the Packers. It's just so weird to see this from an Aaron Rodgers-led team, but I mean, he doesn't have a lot of weapons, and they just don't seem to be getting it going. So, and also they just continue to go away from Aaron Jones, and I just keep saying they need to go to Aaron Jones. He's your only reliable weapon that you have, so you got to go to him, and they just keep going away from him, and it's just weird to see, but the Bills continue to shine, and while yes, they didn't have a spectacular second half, whatever, they still had a solid game. They're 6-1, and Josh Allen, he had a solid game. He went 13 for 25, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Stephon Diggs had another solid game as well, 6 receptions, 108 yards, and 1 touchdown. And going into Monday night's game tonight, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. Right now, the Bengals are a 3.5-point favorite. I just think the Bengals have found their stride, and I think the Browns are just an awful team. They're up and down. They can compete with you, but they're just not that good of a team, and you just don't really know what you're going to get from them. Whereas the Bengals, they do have their issues, especially at offensive line, but I just kind of feel like they've found their stride. And even though Jamar Chase, he's going to be out with a hip injury, T. Higgins is still a phenomenal receiver, and Joe Burrow still has a bunch of weapons to get the ball to. So I think the Bengals are going to win easily tonight, 31-17. And now let's move on to my top 10 NBA power rankings for the week. A little bit of a shakeup because now we actually have every team's played about 6 to 9 games, so we actually have more of a shape of what's going on, even though it's very early in the season. So let's get right to it. Starting with the number 1 team this week is the Milwaukee Bucks. They are the only undefeated team right now. They are 5-0 on the season. This past week, and they did not beat. They beat a bunch of good teams as well. They beat the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Knicks, and the Atlanta Hawks, and they really just are playing great defensively. They're making great shots. They're first in the league right now in rebounds. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he just continues to have another great season. Don't be surprised if he is in the MVP hunt yet again at the end of the season. But also Drew Holiday, he's been a driving force for this team for the last, 3-4 years now. So he's really been huge, but this year he's also been huge. And I mean, this is them without Chris Middleton. He's injured, and I think he's going to be back here in the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see how much better the Bucks get here once Middleton gets back. But they have not lost yet, and we'll see how long they remain undefeated. Then at number 2 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are 5-1 on the season. This past week, they played the Orlando Magic, the Boston Celtics, and the New York Knicks, and they beat all 3 of them, including the Boston Celtics. That ain't no chump squad. As a matter of fact, I believe they were the team that handed the Celtics their first loss of the season, so that says a lot. Right now, they're first in 3-pointers right now, so they're just killing it. Donovan Mitchell, he's just continuing what he was doing in Utah, and it looks like he's got even better. So it's crazy to see the Cavaliers this good. You know, you got Jared Allen. He's also having a great year. So the Cavaliers, I've got them ranked at number 2. Then at number 3 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I've got the Portland Trail Blazers. Current record right now of 5-1. This past week, they beat the Denver Nuggets and the Houston Rockets, and then lost to the Miami Heat. Unfortunately, Damian Lillard was having a really solid season, and then he, of course, got injured last week. He is going to miss a couple of weeks, but the Blazers look like they have a very solid team who, if he only misses a little bit of time here and there, they should be able to tread water and get some wins without him. But you know the Blazers need Damian Lillard healthy, and they do not need him to miss the majority of the season like he did last year. But he is going to miss a couple of weeks, but they still played pretty well without him. They also have this new guy, Anthony Simons. He's having a solid season so far. And then Nurkic. He's getting a ton of rebounds and doing a ton of damage in the paint for the Blazers. Then at number 4 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I have the Phoenix Suns. Overall record of 5-1. This past week, they beat the Golden State Warriors, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Houston Rockets. Right now, they lead the league in field goal percentage. They're actually second in the league with points per game. They're averaging 119 points per game. And they really their main 3 players are really just putting it together and having a solid season with Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and Chris Paul. All 3 of them are basically, Booker's getting all the points, Ayton's getting all the rebounds, and Paul's getting all the assists, basically. And they are just continuing what they did the last couple of seasons and just putting together another great season. Then at number 5 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I have the Boston Celtics. Overall record of 4-2. They suffered a couple losses this week to the Chicago Bulls and the Cleveland Cavaliers. They did get a win against the Washington Wizards. And Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart continue to be the driving forces as to why this team plays so well. Jason Tatum, he's the scoring champ for them. And then you've got Marcus Smart, who's just a defensive, he's just a killer on the defensive side of things. So they're both just really the driving force on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. While they have had a down week this week, the Celtics are still playing really good basketball. Then at number 6 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, a team I did not think was going to even be in the top 10 this year, just because I didn't expect much from them. I still don't expect much from them. I just kind of feel like this is the beginning of the season. It's kind of fluky, but they did get some good wins this week, and I feel like I might as well throw them in there, and that would be the San Antonio Spurs. Right now, they are 5-2. This past week, they basically just played the Minnesota Timberwolves. See, they got 2 wins against the Timberwolves, and then they got 1 loss against the Timberwolves, and then they also beat the Chicago Bulls earlier in the week as well. Jakob Poeltl, he's really the reason why they're doing so well. He's doing great in the paint. And then also this new guy, Keldon Johnson. Other than those 2, I really didn't recognize anybody on the squad, which is why I really don't expect much from the Spurs. But hey, they're looking good right now, so I had to put them in my top 10. Then at number 7 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I have the New Orleans Pelicans. Overall record of 4-2. This past week, they beat the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers and lost to the Phoenix Suns. And they just really are scoring a lot of points. They also are tied at second for most points per game. They currently average 119 points per game as well, just like the Phoenix Suns. So that says a lot. Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, they're playing great when they're in, but of course they both have already suffered some injuries and already have missed a couple of games, so that sucks to see. But other than that, I mean, the Pelicans are looking really good, and when you're averaging 119 points per game, that says a lot. And hey, they beat the Mavericks and the Clippers, 2 really solid teams, and they really did I mean, real. I kind of feel like they would have played a much better game against Phoenix had Zion actually played in that game, but who knows? But regardless, the Pelicans looking good so far this season. Then at number 8 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I have the Utah Jazz, overall record of 5-2. I don't know how they're there. I couldn't name a player on the roster for you. But this week they played 4 games. They got 2 wins against Houston and the Memphis Grizzlies, and 2 losses against the Houston Rockets and the Denver Nuggets. As I said, I don't really know how the Jazz are winning. I just kind of feel like it's more fluky, and we're gonna see them fade away as the season goes on, especially because there's so many trade rumors revolving around the good players left on their team. So I'm really not expecting the Jazz to hang around in my top 10 for much longer, but hey, they're there right now. Then at number 9 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I've got the Memphis Grizzlies, overall record of 4-2. This past week, they beat the Brooklyn Nets and the Sacramento Kings, and they lost to the Utah Jazz. They currently are the league leaders in points per game, and they average 120 points per game. So they are continuing the reign of terror when it comes to scoring. Ja Morant, he is just having another phenomenal season as well. Steven Adams is also having a great year, rebounds, especially in the paint. He's really getting it done. But the Grizzlies, they look really solid yet again this year. And then rounding out my top 10 NBA power rankings, I've got the Minnesota Timberwolves, overall record of 4-3. This past week, they beat the San Antonio Spurs and my Los Angeles Lakers, and then they had 2 losses to the Spurs. They basically just played the Spurs all week, which was very weird, but they did. And, really, Rudy Gobert is fitting right in with this team. He has not lost a step since he was traded from Utah. Russell, he is having such a great year. D'Angelo Russell, just everywhere he goes, other than when he was with the Lakers, he pretty much is doing a lot of things under the radar, most especially, but with the Timberwolves, he's having a phenomenal season. And then, of course, Karl Anthony Towns continues to have a great year. And then Anthony Edwards is also still having a great year. And speaking of my Lakers, they finally got a win yesterday. How awesome for them. They're the last team in the league to get a win. Yeah, even the Sacramento Queens got a fucking win before the Los Angeles pathetic-ass Lakers. So the Lakers still suck. And to round out today's show, we'll call this the stupidity of the weekend. There was a huge college football game this weekend between Michigan State and Michigan. Michigan ended up kicking the crap out of Michigan State just because Michigan is actually a good team. Michigan State, not a good team. And this is a bitter rivalry. And, when on the field, it always makes sense when you see guys going at it with each other, even if they get physical. You don't ever want to see punches thrown, but if they're thrown on the field, it's completely different than when they're off the field. And unfortunately, at the end of the Michigan State versus Michigan game, unfortunately, in the tunnel, there's only one tunnel that both teams walk down. And I guess walking back to their locker rooms at the end of the game, 10 Michigan State players ganged up on 2 separate Michigan players, one at a time. So it was basically 10-on-1, and it got very physical and intimidating, and they were pushing the guys to the ground and basically just sucker punching them and doing what you should not be doing. Like I just said, when it's on the field, it's way different, but then once the game's over, you need to grow up and get over yourself. And especially with what happened. Luckily, I guess the 4 players who were really kind of the masterminds of this, they've been suspended from the team. Hopefully they're released, and hopefully they do not get to play college football ever again, because what they did was absolutely disgusting. You do not walk off the field and gang up on 2 dudes and make it 10-on-1 and push them to the ground and be intimidating them and yelling at them and punching them and hitting them and not letting them get by you. That was very disgusting to watch and see. And like I said, especially because it was after the game, and maybe you losers should have actually played better on the field and you wouldn't have been embarrassed like you were on the field. And then you were embarrassed after the game as well, because then 4 of you get suspended and now you look completely fucking stupid, because that was completely fucking stupid and uncalled for. And also, those guys are going to be charged criminally, it looks like, as they should, because the game was over. I hate poor sports. I've always hated poor sports. I'm the type of person who feels like once the game's over, even if you're pissed off and you lost just a horrible game where your heart was ripped out on the court or the field, you go over there, you shake hands, you say good game, and even if you hate the motherfuckers and are pissed off, you turn around and you walk away, and that's that. And you respect the game, and once the game is over, that's it, because that's all it is. It's a game. It's not worth beating the shit out of people, and that was just ridiculous to see a mob of like 10 dudes on one dude, and on 2 separate occasions, 2 separate dudes, one at a time, getting mobbed up by 10 guys. Bullshit. Win the game on the field, and then get the fuck over yourself off the field. So that was stupid to see, and hopefully all those Michigan State players get exactly what they deserve. So on that note, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the week of sports, and I will talk to you fools on Wednesday.